Here is Immortal Moments for explanation. Friends, like videos and subscribes to our channel. Martial Universe Season 10 Part 74 Explanation. So let's start our explanation. Have you resolved the matter? In a room within the Lin clan, Lin Xiao looked at Lin Dong, who had returned, as he smiled and asked. Lin Dong nodded. After which, he roughly explained the matters that had occurred within the Great Wastelands tablet. Lin Xiao's expression changed when he heard that there was actually such a powerful Yimo within the Great Wastelands tablet. He sighed quietly and nodded. If it was not for Lin Dong, there would likely be another great calamity. Father, I have been away for quite some time. I will perhaps return to Dao Sect tomorrow. Lin Dong handed a jade token to Lin Xiao and said, shatter this jade token if any problems occurs. I will hurry back immediately. It was time for him to return to the sect after being away for such a long time. Moreover, he could also sense that Ju Tong's Yuan spirit in the ancestral stone was beginning to recover. It was likely that he would really like to see Dao Sect when he awakened. Lin Xiao received the jade token and nodded. After which, he smilingly said, that's right, you should go and see Miss Qingzhu. You brought her to our house only to disappear for 10 days. This is too rude. Lin Dong shook his head helplessly after seeing the gloating smile on Lin Xiao. I had originally thought that the matter would be very quickly resolved. It was unexpected for him to have been delayed for so long. Lin Dong headed for the courtyard after leaving the room where he saw Ling Qingzhu chatting with Liu Yang. The former merely glanced at Lin Dong when he appeared before withdrawing her eyes. Ha ha, Donger is back. Liu Yang smiled towards Lin Dong. After which, she stepped forward and patted Lin Dong's shoulders. After throwing a meaningful look towards Ling Qingzhu, she smilingly left. Lin Dong smiled bitterly and walked towards Qingzhu. Ling Qingzhu waved her sleeve gently. Her pretty eyes slightly lowered as she said in a faint voice, I will be returning to Nine Heavens Supreme Purity Palace tomorrow. Although her tone appeared uncaring, Lin Dong could still hear an extremely faint trace of anger within. She had panicked slightly when she was being brought back by him in such a manner. Yet, Lin Dong had disappeared during this period of time. This undoubtedly caused her to feel awkward and angry. However, she had extremely good manners, and interacted with Liu Yang and Lin Dong's other elders with a smile. Nevertheless, it was inevitable that she would feel angry at Lin Dong for disappearing without telling her. He had brought her home, only to disappear. What was the meaning of this? Lin Dong hurriedly pulled her sleeve as he smiled bitterly and said, it is indeed my fault this time. Originally, I believed that I would be able to swiftly resolve the problem. I did not expect to be delayed for so long. Lin Dong observed Ling Qingzhu's pretty face as he spoke. I met the 9th Seat King of Devil Prison. 9th Seat King? Ling Qingzhu's expression changed. Having exchanged blows with the 7th Seat King, she naturally understood that just how terrifying those Yimo from Devil Prison with the title of Seated Kings were. They had failed to gain an advantage against the 7th Seat King despite their cooperation. Yet, Lin Dong had encountered the 9th Seat King alone? Are you all right? Ling Qingzhu raised her eyebrow. A trace of concern was present in her clear eyes as she looked towards Lin Dong. I'm fine. That fellow's strength was greatly reduced because he was sealed. However, I still had to battle him for a couple of days. Lin Dong's eyes spun with thought. He glanced at Ling Qingzhu and eloquently exaggerated the dangers when fighting the 9th Seat King. It was as though he had only obtained a narrow victory after barely evading the jaws of death. However, this attempt of his did not appear to be of much use against Ling Qingzhu. Her pretty face remained as unmoving as still water. There was no reaction no matter how Lin Dong exaggerated. Lin Dong could only helplessly stop after seeing that she was indifferent. It was indeed difficult to deal with an intelligent woman. Ling Qingzhu finally glanced at Lin Dong as he grew softer and softer. Her red lips curled slightly after seeing the latter's resentful face and her eyes became a little gentler. Although Lin Dong had exaggerated, a big battle was definitely unavoidable after meeting the 9th Seat King. I will not be coming again if you dare to do this next time. The originally resentful Lin Dong was startled when he heard the voice that had suddenly emerged from beside him. He laughed dryly and nodded. "Rest assured that I will also bring you along the next time." Lin Dong sighed in relief. He had finally passed this trial. "Are you returning tomorrow?" Lin Dong changed the topic and asked. "Yes." Ling Qingzhu lightly nodded and said, "After all, I have been away for such a long time. Although the palace has many elders to maintain it, I cannot continue like this as the palace master. Coincidentally, I am also planning on returning to Sect tomorrow. In that case, I will send you back to Nine Heavens Supreme Purity Palace." Lin Dong nodded and said, "I will go into cultivation seclusion and attempt to comprehend reincarnation when I return to the palace. It is likely that I will not come out for some time." Ling Qingzhu looked at Lin Dong and said, "You should spend more time trying to understand the zenith sensing art. The way you sense it does not come from within. Currently, you are only at the entry level. This is far from sufficient if you wish to reach the level of those ancient masters." Lin Dong was stunned. His expression was complicated as he looked at Ling Qingzhu. She was indeed aware of his intentions with regards to learning the zenith sensing art. Ling Qingzhu avoided his gaze. After which, she headed out of the courtyard. "You have been busy. Please rest." However, a hand suddenly grabbed her wrist as she was turning around. The warmth transmitted from it caused her alluring figure to tremble. She anxiously tried to escape, but the great strength from the hand prevented her from doing so. Slight panic was revealed on her usually aloof and pretty face revealed, What are you planning to, A force was suddenly transmitted from her hand. Subsequently, she lightly crashed into a firm chest. Next, her narrow and soft waist was firmly embraced by a pair of hands. "Thank you." A soft apologetic voice sounded beside her ear before she could struggle. Ling Qingzhu's figure stopped moving as she stood there with a red face. She did not know what she ought to do. If this was someone else, it was likely that she would have drawn her sword and slashed him into two. However, she was unable to harden her heart against this fellow. All she could do was gently bite her lower lips and allowed him to take advantage of her. However, Lin Dong did not bring things any further. He merely hugged the person in his embrace in an attempt to relieve some of the apologetic feelings in his heart. The courtyard was quiet. It was a long time later before a lovely figure finally appeared at the gate to the courtyard. She saw the two figures hugging, and curled her small lips as she released an intentional soft snort. She might have been soft, but it immediately broke the atmosphere in the courtyard, and Ling Qingzhu abruptly recovered. She stared at Lin Dong in an embarrassed and angry manner. His actions had caused the latter's heart to pound harder. Before he could speak, however, Ling Qingzhu had already fled in panic. Such an appearance was completely different from her usual aloof and indifferent self. Lin Dong laughed dryly. He looked at Qingtan, who was covering her small mouth, and smiled in an embarrassed manner. Qingtan walked to Lin Dong's side. Her pretty eyes looked at the direction Ling Qingzhu had fled as she said, "Big brother Lin Dong, I recall that you still have a Ying Huan from Sect, right? If you do this." Lin Dong felt his head swell upon hearing this. This girl was clearly looking for trouble. He immediately extended his hand and violently rubbed Qingtan's small head. A child should not utter such nonsense when it comes to the matters between adults. "I am the master of Darkness Palace, not some little child," Qingtan said unhappily. Lin Dong extended his finger and chuckled as he flicked Qingtan's smooth forehead. "Big brother Lin Dong, are you returning to Sect tomorrow?" Qingtan suddenly hugged Lin Dong's arm and happily asked. Lin Dong nodded. From her appearance, it was likely that she had heard it from Lin Xiao. "I want to go too." "No. Stay at home and keep father and mother company. Father and mother have agreed." "No? In that case, I will send a Yuan spirit message to Ying Huan and tell her what you did earlier. Are you asking for a beating?" The next day, Lin Dong looked at the lovely Qingtan, who smilingly followed behind him. All he could do was to shake his head in a displeased manner. He had finally experienced this girl's amazing pestering ability. Ling Qingzhu stood gracefully beside him. She was currently smiling and chatting with Liu Yang, who had come to send them off. Father, mother, we are leaving. Lin Dong saw that it was almost time. He smiled and spoke towards Lin Xiao and Liu Yang. Okay. Be careful. The Lin Xiao couple nodded. Lin Dong was no longer the youth from back then. They were aware of the achievements of their son, and this made them extremely proud. Lin Dong also grinned and replied. After which, he did not delay any longer. With a wave of his sleeve, the three of them had already turned into a ray of light and shot into the distance. They disappeared into the horizon in the blink of an eye. Lin Dong sent Ling Qingzhu back to Nine Heavens Supreme Purity Palace after leaving the Great Yang Empire. After a period of reconstruction, Nine Heavens Supreme Purity Palace was once again complete. The Lin Dong duo stayed for a while, before bidding her goodbye and headed straight for Dao Sect. Within half a day, the mountain range of Dao Sect once again appeared in their sights. Lin Dong's eyes scanned the area and paused for a moment. A lovely figure was seated on the cliff atop a mountain. Her long icy blue hair scattered downwards, and she gave off a chilling aura, causing the surrounding land to be covered in frost. Huan Huan. Lin Dong was startled when he saw the familiar figure and hurriedly flew over with Qing Tan. Meanwhile, the figure had also detected his return, and ripples appeared in her pretty but icy eyes. You are back. Ying Huan Huan stood up. A slight smile surfaced on her pretty face. Why are you here? Lin Dong smiled and asked. I was waiting for you. Ying Huan Huan's delicate hand lifted a strand of long icy blue hair and laughed softly. She said it as if it was the most normal thing in the world. Lin Dong was stunned. He gazed at Ying Huan Huan's pretty face. Those icy blue eyes appeared like blue gemstones. Though they were completely icy, there was some gentleness within this air-freezing iciness. Compared to the past, she seemed to have become a little quieter. Lin Dong vaguely felt that something was amiss. However, he was unable to explain it. You are still running around in this condition. Lin Dong sighed softly. He extended his hand towards her and said, let's head back. Ying Huan Huan nodded. She smiled and a cold slender hand held Lin Dong's hand. The iciness within her heart seemed to ripple as she felt the warmth in her palm, while the smile on her lips became even gentler. You are Huan Huan. Qing Tan, who was following beside Lin Dong, looked at Ying Huan Huan, who had changed greatly from back then. She was a little stunned as she asked, why have you become like this? Don't ask unnecessary questions. Lin Dong patted Qing Tan's small head. After he pulled her along and directly headed towards Dao Sect. His eyes turned towards a mountain behind them just as he was about to enter Dao Sect and nodded in gratitude. The Flame Master stood there and watched the three of them enter Dao Sect. After which, he softly sighed with a complicated expression. After entering Dao Sect, Lin Dong was alone in the front, while Qing Tan and Ying Huan Huan followed behind. The two girls knew each other from before, and had even worked together against Yuan Kang. Hence, they were rather friendly. Now that they had met again, they gave off the feeling of things between them staying the same, although both of them had changed. Several Dao Sect disciples could be seen on the way back. When they saw that Lin Dong had returned, surprise and joy emerged in their eyes. Various warm and welcoming cries could be heard even from far away. Lin Dong gently smiled to the new disciples whose faces were still somewhat immature. From their eyes, he could see a kind of zeal. Such zeal was formed from belief, and for those who possessed this belief, if Dao Sect was to meet a similar fate as Great Desolate Sect in the very distant future, their wills will perhaps also continue to protect Dao Sect. The trio flew up onto the main mountain peak where Ying Xuanzi and a group of Dao Sect elders were already waiting in front of the main hall. When they saw Lin Dong return, smiles surfaced on their faces. Although the flames of war in the eastern Xian region had already been extinguished, the morale of the entire Dao Sect could only perfectly meld together when Lin Dong was around. Lin Dong bowed to Ying Xuanzi. After conversing for a while, he paused and said, Sect Master, Senior Brother Ju Tong should be able to come out now. Upon hearing this, Ying Xuanzi's expression turned complicated. Soon after, he gently nodded as the numerous elders behind him cast their gazes over. Before Lin Dong appeared, Zhu Tong had been a legend in Dao Sect. If he had been able to continue cultivating in Dao Sect, he would have perhaps long become the Dao Sect master. Lin Dong gently waved his hand as gentle white light emerged from his palm. Soon after, the ancestral stone appeared. With a flick of his finger, a ray of light shined emerged from the ancestral stone. The light gradually gathered together, before transforming into a black-robed figure under everyone's watching eyes. It was Zhu Tong. Zhu Tong gradually opened his tightly shut eyes. Ying Xuanzi and the rest of the crowd standing before him entered his eyes. Soon after, his body slightly stiffened, as a complicated expression emerged on his face. His lips gently trembled, and he slowly lowered his body. Both knees touched the ground as a rather raspy voice echoed in front of the hall. "Master, disciple has returned." Ying Xuanzi's body started to shake at this moment. It seemed as if his usually calm face was about to lose control. He slowly walked forward and gently rubbed Zhu Tong's head. His eyes filled with moisture as he softly said, "It's good that you're back, it's good that you're back." The numerous elders around them also silently sighed. They knew of how Zhu Tong had suffered over the years. The Dao Sect legend from back then had almost become a tool of Yuan Gate, and had even been used against their Dao Sect. Back then, this disciple did not understand the big picture. "I let my emotions affect my decisions, and did not listen to Master's words. That was why such a calamity occurred." As he gazed at Ying Xuanzi's moist eyes, even with his temperament, tears involuntarily flowed from Zhu Tong's eyes. Which youngster does not have his reckless moments? Ying Xuanzi gently chuckled. Soon after he turned slightly silent, "As long as you don't blame Master for being weak and unwilling to avenge you. As the sect master, Master naturally has to consider the entire sect." Zhu Tong shook his head. He had never blamed Ying Xuanzi from the start. Just like Lin Dong back then, they both understood Ying Xuanzi. At times, choosing to make those seemingly weak decisions was even more courageous than using their lives to fight. Ying Xuanzi wiped the corners of his eyes, before he gazed at the incomparably enormous Dao Sect. His voice suddenly rang out across the entire sect, "My disciple, the entire Dao Sect welcomes you back." His voice echoed into the distance. Countless Dao Sect disciples were slightly stunned as they cast their gazes towards the main peak. Quickly after, joy immediately surged in their eyes. "That is, senior brother Zhu Tong." Although many of the newer disciples were rather unfamiliar with this name, they could see the intense emotions on some of the older disciples' faces. Subsequently, earth-shattering cheers erupted. Lin Dong looked upon the now excited Dao Sect. He smiled at the red-eyed Zhu Tong and said, "Welcome back, senior brother Zhu Tong." Zhu Tong stood up, gazing at the Dao Sect before him. Intense emotions and a smile also appeared on his face. He cupped his fists together towards Lin Dong and said, "Junior brother Lin Dong, many thanks to you for this." If Lin Dong had not used the ancestral stone to protect his Yuan spirit and even nourished it, it was likely that he would have long disappeared into nothingness. Lin Dong grinned and shook his head. He extended his hand as silver light flickered, and a spatial ancestral symbol appeared. "Since senior brother Zhu Tong has already recovered, this spatial ancestral symbol should return to its owner." Zhu Tong was a little taken aback as he gazed at the spatial ancestral symbol. Subsequently, he looked at Lin Dong. The latter was smiling with an earnest look in his eyes. There was no desire for this spatial ancestral symbol within them. Zhu Tong was silent for some time. He slowly reached out his hand to receive the spatial ancestral symbol. As he stared at the ancestral symbol, complicated feelings filled his eyes. In the end, he seemed to softly chuckle. His fingertip gently cut the air, as a faint line of blood appeared on the spatial ancestral symbol. Subsequently, it was broken with a light thrust of his finger. Crack! The blood line silently shattered as Zhu Tong's complexion instantly turned deathly pale. He gently stroked the spatial ancestral symbol as he softly said, "Sorry for making you suffer the contamination of demonic qi with me for so many years. However, I believe that your next owner will be even more perfect than myself." Circular light rippled from the spatial ancestral symbol as a faint buzzing sound emerged. The sound seemed to similarly be filled with reluctance. Senior brother Ju Tong. Lin Dong blankly watched this scene. As an ancestral symbol controller, he naturally understood what Ju Tong had done. He had cut off his connection to the spatial ancestral symbol from his end, an action that would surely inflict serious damage to himself. Even his Yuan spirit had now become much more incorporeal than before. Junior brother Lin Dong, as an ancestral symbol controller, you should also know of the calamity this world will face in future. I believe that the spatial ancestral symbol will be more suitable for you than myself. Ju Tong gently smiled at Lin Dong, before handing back the spatial ancestral symbol. I can feel that it also believes this. Lin Dong's expression was complicated. He stared at the spatial ancestral symbol that flickered with silver light as he softly sighed. While he hesitated, an ice-cold hand gently gripped his hand. He tilted his head and saw Ying Huan's pretty face. She softly said, "This is the spatial ancestral symbol and senior brother Ju Tong's choice." Lin Dong bitterly laughed. In the end, he nodded, before he reached out and received the spatial ancestral symbol. "Senior brother Ju Tong, I will not let it be overlooked and will take on the responsibility of an ancestral symbol controller." Buzz. Faint light emerged from the spatial ancestral symbol. Like liquid, it stealthily merged into Lin Dong's palm. At this moment, he could feel an ancient and pure energy ripple within his body. Ripples emerged from the devouring ancestral symbol and the thunderbolt ancestral symbol, rejecting the spatial ancestral symbol from existing in the same body by reflex. However, gentle light quickly blossomed from the ancestral stone. Under this light, the rejection between them stealthily weakened. Silver light rippled from Lin Dong's body in circles. The space around him seemed like lake water at this moment, and intense ripples could be seen. "Junior brother Lin Dong, the spatial ancestral symbol has already acknowledged you. Next, you should quickly master it." Ju Tong watched the spatial ancestral symbol fuse with Lin Dong's body as he smiled and said. Lin Dong nodded his head. He could feel the Yuan power within his body start to swell at an alarming speed when the spatial ancestral symbol entered his body. This caused ripples to form in his calm heart. With the reinforcement of the spatial ancestral symbol, he could finally formally try to attack the reincarnation stage. Lin Dong turned around and asked Ying Huan to take care of Qingtan. Without further ado, his body moved and appeared on a nearby mountain peak as he immediately sat down. He currently needed to completely refine and gain control of this spatial ancestral symbol. Dazzling silver light continuously emerged from Lin Dong's body. Like a glorious silver sun, it drew countless gazes in Dao Sect. When Ying Huan saw that Lin Dong had entered into a cultivation state, her jade-like hand gently waved, and cold qi turned the surroundings of the mountain peak into a layer of ice, protecting him within it. Looks like he plans to use this opportunity to attack the reincarnation stage. Ying Xuanzi was very perceptive. He had determined Lin Dong's aim with a single look, and immediately lamented. Who could have imagined that the little disciple from back then would so thoroughly leave him behind in the dust? Junior brother Lin Dong's talent is even greater than my own. Our Dao sect will surely prosper with him around. Ju Tong also nodded. Even someone like himself rather admired Lin Dong's accomplishments. In the battle outside Yuan Gate back then, he had already completely acknowledged Lin Dong's strength. Then let us silently wait for him. Ying Xuanzi softly chuckled. If Lin Dong was able to advance to the reincarnation stage, he would truly enter the ranks of this world's apex experts. At that time, the number of people who could surpass him could be counted on one hand. Stinking big brother Lin Dong. He left me alone again. Qingtan pouted a little and said in a displeased manner. Ying Huan pulled her as she smiled and said, I will take care of you on his behalf. Only after hearing this, did Qingtan smile sweetly. Her large eyes looked towards the mountain peak as a slightly pained and almost undetectable look flitted across them. To be honest, being able to look at you like this is more than enough for me. On a distant mountain peak, the Flame Master shifted his gaze towards the mountain Lin Dong was on. With his hands behind his back, he softly said, the third ancestral symbol Her. Lin Dong, To have reached this level, you are truly extraordinary, however. If you intend on surpassing little junior sister, let us see if you truly have the qualifications. Majestic and powerful Yuan power were coursing through Lin Dong's body like floodwaters. Moreover, his Yuan power seemed to be growing at a frightening rate. The three ancestral symbols within Lin Dong's body had formed into a triangle and they were facing each other from afar. However, the three of them seemed to be repelling gently against each other. Meanwhile, the ancestor stone was floating quietly in the middle, while its warm and gentle strength was continuously alleviating the resistance between the ancestral symbols. Amongst the three ancestral symbols, the devouring ancestral symbol and the thunderbolt ancestral symbol were a little tamer. After all, they had been refined by Lin Dong. However, the resistance from the newly arrived spatial ancestral symbol clearly stood out. This resistance was likely something that was not intended, but it was its inbuilt resistance against the other ancestral symbols. After all, it was already a great blessing for an ordinary person to possess one symbol, and having them coexist in a single body was a feat that was nearly impossible to accomplish. Since the beginning of time, other than the symbol ancestor, no one else was able to successfully accommodate all 8 great ancestral symbols within a single body. Therefore, although Lin Dong only possessed 3 ancestral symbols, accommodating all 3 of them was already a task that was more difficult than one could ever imagine. Lin Dong's heart was as calm as still water and he did not intentionally dispel those resistance. Instead, he merely calmed his heart down quietly while he sensed that mysterious spatial strength. After all, if he wanted to successfully gain control of the spatial ancestral symbol, he had to know it inside out. Thankfully, since Lin Dong knew how to control both the devouring ancestral symbol and the thunderbolt ancestral symbol, he did not panic. Instead, he immersed his mind within the spatial ancestral symbol. In fact, it was vaguely possible for him to detect that his surrounding space had begun to wiggle. Moreover, it felt as though the mysterious empty space possessed life. Lin Dong's mind slowly extended from within his body. After which, he merged with his surrounding space, before he followed the empty space and began to spread in waves. The empty space was omnipresent. Lin Dong's mind merged with the empty space itself. After which, just like an invisible eye, everything in this world was reflected within Lin Dong's eyes. In fact, he saw the ice barrier covering the mountains, and also saw countless Dao Sect disciples that were looking in his direction. After which, his mind followed the empty space and drifted even further. 30 miles, 300 miles, 3,000 miles and even further away. Lin Dong's mind was just like a roaming ghost at this moment, as it spread into the distance in a manner that an ordinary person could not accomplish. While doing so, he could feel that the obscure sensation created when he first immersed his mind with the empty space was disappearing stealthily as his mind spread into the distance. Finally, that sensation disappeared completely. Lin Dong's mind was currently immersed in this endless drifting. His mind continued to drift for a long time, before Lin Dong suddenly felt that his mind was becoming blurry. After which, he quickly awakened. Then, he was stunned when he realized that his mind seemed to have turned into a void in this realm, and he could no longer summon it back. Only at this moment did he realize just how dangerous this training method was. If he could not summon his mind back into his body, his physical body would become just like a stone statue, and he would no longer be able to move. Anxiety surged within his heart. Soon after, Lin Dong forcefully calmed himself down. After all, he knew that if he panicked at this moment, it was likely that his mind would no longer be able to return. Since this was a trial, there was ultimately a way to break it. Lin Dong gradually calmed his mind down. Soon after, he stopped putting up a resistance. Instead, he followed his mind and completely merged with the empty space itself. A long time later, he suddenly realized that his mind was rising together with the empty space. Finally, it became extremely distant from the ground. Meanwhile, gales whizzed around him, while everything in his sight became increasingly tiny at a frightening speed. Clouds flew past and even the bright sun became increasingly distant. Soon after, darkness began to surge. This darkness looked just like an endless void, causing fear to rise within one's heart. After all, even a reincarnation stage expert could not reach a place like this. Lin Dong continued to drift for a long time, before his mind suddenly shook. Immediately, he turned to his back and saw many 200,000 miles large light rays entwining around each other, before they spread within the distant darkness. Moreover, those light rays seemed to form a huge and frightening formation, and the energy permeating over that formation seemed to cause even the world to tremble. Lin Dong's mind was looking at the back of that super formation. Meanwhile, there seemed to be a 200,000 miles large black crack at that spot, and that crack looked like a wiggling devil dragon. Moreover, an endless darkness, that was completely void of light, was right behind, and it looked like the land of devils. Frightening evil demonic aura continued to surge. However, it was blocked by that super formation. Lin Dong was startled as he stared at that black crack. Could this be the legendary crack between the planes? Moreover, was the area behind the crack where the Yimo originated from. Lin Dong's mind trembled violently at this moment. Even though he merely took a single glance at that crack, it caused him to nearly lose his mind. In fact, the evilness within seemed capable of causing one to sink endlessly within it. If this crack was the crack between the planes, the 200,000 miles large super formation in front of his eyes should have been left behind by the symbol ancestor. Only a man like him could create such a formation that could annihilate the world and seal an entire plane. Symbol ancestor. Lin Dong muttered to himself. Meanwhile, he was focusing his attention on that super formation. He could feel that a wave of energy emitted from that formation was able to easily shatter a peak expert who had passed 2 reincarnation tribulations into pieces. That man was indeed worthy of being the strongest person since the beginning of time. His strength was something that others feared yet respected. While Lin Dong was secretly in awe over the frightening strength of that super formation, he suddenly realized that his mind was gradually drifting towards that formation. Immediately, he was stunned by this discovery as cold sweat began to cover his entire body. After all, be it the super formation or the crack between the planes, he could not oppose any of them with his current strength. Nonetheless, regardless of how much he struggled, Lin Dong was unable to break free. Hence, he could only stare in shock while his mind grew closer to that super formation. As he gradually approached that formation, the pressure radiating from that super formation also caused his mind to tremble. In fact, it felt as though his mind was about to scatter at this moment. However, as Lin Dong slowly approached that super formation, it also discovered his presence. After which, above that formation, a faint light spread and actually formed an illusionary figure that almost covered the entire world. Though one was unable to discern the appearance of that illusionary figure, he gave off a ripple that could tower over the entire world. Is that the symbol ancestor? That illusionary figure was only the upper half of a body. However, it looked as though the entire world was beneath him. Then, he slowly extended his large hand before his finger penetrated the empty space and pressed down towards Lin Dong. Lin Dong could not dodge such an attack. Instantly, that finger had already landed on his body. Bang! Lin Dong's mind seemingly shattered the moment that finger touched him. After which, he felt the darkness disappearing swiftly. Then, the sky appeared once again before clouds resurfaced. After which, his mind began to fall rapidly. Swoosh swoosh. This descent continued for a long time. Soon after, Lin Dong suddenly opened his eyes. Immediately, rich shock surfaced on his face, while cold perspiration rained down from his forehead, drenching his entire body instantly. Have I returned? Lin Dong extended his slightly trembling hand before he clenched it. Then, he looked at that ice barrier, which was located outside. Through that layer of ice, it was possible to see the bustling Dao Sect. Meanwhile, countless Dao Sect disciples were shuttling around. Compared to what he experienced before, what he experienced now was as different as life and death. Lin Dong lifted his head and looked at the sky with some lingering fear. At a place so far away that he could not reach, there was a super formation created by the symbol ancestor after he ignited his reincarnation. Moreover, there was also a terrifying crack between the planes. Even a reincarnation stage expert was unable to reach that place. However, with the help of the spatial ancestral symbol, Lin Dong managed to catch a glimpse of that place. However, that feeling was simply far too frightening. Previously, Lin Dong felt as though his soul was shattered. If that illusionary figure had even the slightest desire to kill him, it was likely that he would have been completely annihilated. Lin Dong wiped off the cold sweat on his forehead. Suddenly, his hand paused before he looked at his palm. After which, he saw that his palm was now giving off a faint silver glow. This sudden change caused him to be startled. Subsequently, he looked at his body. At this moment, his body was giving off a silver glow. Moreover, a peculiar sensation had emerged between his brows. Lin Dong gently shut his eyes. Immediately, he felt like his surrounding space seemed to have merged with him. In fact, with a single thought, he could appear 300 miles away. This is, am I in control of the spatial ancestral symbol? This unique sensation left Lin Dong in shock. Promptly, wild joy surged within his eyes. After all, only someone who was in control of the spatial ancestral symbol could merge perfectly with the empty space itself. Lin Dong quickly shut his eyes. After which, he probed the spatial ancestral symbol, which was floating quietly within his body and had formed a triangular shape with the devouring ancestral symbol and the thunderbolt ancestral symbol. However, he realized that the resistance from before had disappeared completely. Hum hum. While Lin Dong was observing the quiet spatial ancestral symbol with joy, the latter suddenly shook. After which, he felt that as the spatial ancestral symbol began to tremble, the mighty Yuan power within his body began to gather at a rapid rate, just like floodwaters. While his Yuan power began to gather together at a crazy rate, a unique change began to occur within his mighty Yuan power. It was a transformation that only occurred when his strength had agglomerated until its limits. Ocean-like Yuan power floated within Lin Dong's body. Meanwhile, there was a mysterious ripple at the bottom of that Yuan power ocean. As that mysterious ripple slowly grew, the divine sensation slowly spread. It was the reincarnation ripple. Shock gushed into Lin Dong's eyes. That was because he knew that he was about to take a step, one which had obstructed countless of experts for their entire lives. After that one step was reincarnation. Time flies. All of a sudden, 2 months had passed. During the past 2 months, the ice barrier on the mountain peak did not disappear. Hence, everyone could only vaguely see a skinny figure within that ice barrier. However, with the passage of time, even an ordinary Tao Sect disciple could detect that an extremely frightening Yuan power fluctuation was slowly gathering within that ice barrier. Thick layers of clouds rolled in the sky above Tao Sect. Those clouds were all formed from Yuan power. Meanwhile, the density of the Yuan power within had reached an extremely frightening stage. The pressure radiating from those Yuan power caused even a Samsara stage expert's heart to shudder. Situated at the main mountain of Tao Sect, Ying Xuanzi and the rest lifted their heads and stared in amazement at the sky. Currently, Ying Xuanzi was a top expert who had touched reincarnation. However, he was ultimately unable to take the final step. This was because not only was his knowledge of reincarnation lacking, but the density of the Yuan power within his body had not reached that abnormal level. Since his Yuan power was lacking, he was naturally unable to create reincarnation will. However, from the looks of it, it's about time. Ying Xuanzi muttered to himself. He could sense that the Yuan power gathering in the sky had gradually reached their limits. After all, if the Yuan power continued to accumulate, it was likely that the entire place would collapse. Bang! However, soon after his voice sounded, a strange noise was suddenly emitted from the sky. Immediately, countless Tao Sect disciples lifted their heads in shock. Then, they saw that the Yuan power clouds, that were spread over 300 miles, were slowly distorting at this moment. Strange rays of light penetrated through the clouds and shone downwards. Anyone who was shone by those light rays immediately felt absent-minded. Meanwhile, the Yuan power within their bodies grew stealthily. The light of reincarnation. On a mountain peak a short distance away, when the Flame Master saw those rays of light, his pupils hardened gently. Subsequently, he directed his attention towards that mountain peak, which was covered by a layer of ice. Lin Dong had finally taken this step. If he advanced to the reincarnation stage, he will be qualified to join the ranks of the elite. The Flame Master muttered to himself. Soon after, he frowned gently. Then, he used his palm to touch his chest before a dark expression flashed across his eyes. Those fellows, they have finally made their move. Bang! The yuan power clouds in the sky began to churn at a quicker pace. In the next moment, a thunderous noise suddenly appeared. After which, everyone was stunned when they saw that the layers of clouds were actually forcefully ripped apart, before a 10,000 feet large yuan power torrent suddenly poured downwards. That yuan power torrent looked just like a waterfall that hung from the sky, as it descended together with a frightening momentum. Finally, it descended onto the ice barrier in front of countless pairs of stunned eyes. Crack! That extremely sturdy ice barrier collapsed instantaneously, before ice fragments shot in all directions. At a short distance away, when Jingtan saw that the ice barrier was broken, her expression changed immediately. Promptly, she clenched her small hand, before black light spread. However, just as she was about to intervene, an icy cold hand stopped her. This is something that one must personally experience in order to break into the reincarnation stage. No one else should intervene. Otherwise, it will only be detrimental towards him. Ying Huan said. Upon hearing this, Jingtan gently bit her lips. Then, she looked at that mountain peak in a somewhat worried manner. That yuan power assault was truly frightening, and there was no telling if Lin Dong could withstand it. That ice barrier was shattered. Immediately, countless pairs of eyes turned to look in that direction. Then, they saw that the skinny figure seated on that mountain peak had also stood up at this moment. As he stared at that descending yuan power waterfall, there wasn't the slightest hint of fear on his face. Instead, there was wild heat surging within his dark black eyes. Buzz! Lin Dong's body shook gently. After which, an enormous black hole appeared above his head. That yuan power waterfall landed, before it charged ruthlessly into that black hole. However, this attack was so terrifying that it even caused that black hole to tremble. Then, Lin Dong suddenly took a step back. In fact, it seemed like his inner organs were displaced after that attack. However, Lin Dong also knew that there was no way he could shrink back at this moment. The black hole began to rotate at an increasingly rapid pace. Meanwhile, the devouring power within Lin Dong's body was unleashed to its limits as it crazily devoured the frightening yuan power. Subsequently, it was transmitted into Lin Dong's body. As those mighty yuan power entered his body, it looked as though there were countless yuan power snakes wiggling on his body. It was quite a frightening sight. One end of the yuan power waterfall was connected to the clouds in the sky, while the other was pouring into the black hole. In fact, it looked like a huge dragon that connected the sky to the ground. It was a spectacular sight to behold. However, it was clearly not an easy task to advance to the reincarnation stage. Soon after the first yuan power waterfall descended, the yuan power cloud suddenly churned once again. After which, everyone was stunned when they saw 10 yuan power waterfalls whizzing down from the clouds. They looked just like white dragons, as they bared their claws and charged ferociously towards Lin Dong. When they saw this sight, Ying Xuanzi and the rest's expressions changed drastically. In fact, Jingtan even clenched her small hand tightly. Meanwhile, standing beside them, Ying Huan's icy blue eyes were staring intently at that figure on the mountain peak. Huff! Lin Dong had also realized this development. Immediately, his pupils shrunk gently. Soon after, a ruthless expression flashed across his eyes. If he could not survive this trial, how could he possibly dream about surpassing the ancient masters? Devouring ancestral symbol. A low and deep roar was suddenly emitted from Lin Dong's mouth. Soon after, an extremely pure black light came whistling from his head. After which, black light gathered rapidly above his head, before they finally transformed into a massive black symbol. As that symbol slowly wiggled, frightening amounts of devouring power erupted. Due to that devouring power, everyone was shocked when they realized that the yuan power within their bodies were actually showing signs of spluttering forth. Is that the devouring ancestral symbol? Ying Xuanzi and the rest were a little stunned as they looked at that black mysterious ancient symbol. Was this the legendary devouring ancestral symbol? The devouring ancestral symbol wiggled rapidly. Soon after, it swiftly turned into a black human figure, who looked exactly the same as Lin Dong. However, his eyes were just like black holes as they looked extremely deep and mysterious. Roar! That black figure roared towards the sky. Then, a terrifying amount of devouring power erupted from his mouth. In fact, even the sky itself was devoured until it became distorted. Moreover, the 10 yuan power waterfalls were also affected by it, as they crazily poured into the mouth of that black figure together with a frightening momentum. While Lin Dong devoured at this frightening rate, low and deep explosive noises continuously sounded from within his body. Soon after, everyone was stunned when they saw that his body was swelling at a frightening rate. Within a short period of time, Lin Dong turned into a 1,000,000-feet-tall giant. Meanwhile, the yuan power were coursing through his body like a raging python. Bang! Suddenly, Lin Dong's arm, which had swelled to its limits, actually blew apart. Immediately, blood spurted forth, before countless Dao Sect disciples involuntarily exclaimed in shock. Did he fail? Many pairs of anxiety-filled eyes shot over, only to see that after Lin Dong's arm blew apart, there was a jade bone arm with a mysterious glow sparkling over it. Moreover, there seemed to be a dragon roar spreading from within his bones. Life chi surged, before the blood and flesh on his arm began to regenerate at a frighteningly rate. However, at this moment, various parts of Lin Dong's body continuously blew apart. As a result, his body was in a complete mess, and this sight caused one's heart to shudder in fear. Nonetheless, after any part of his body was blown apart after it was stuffed full of yuan power, blood and flesh would regenerate quickly. After all, as long as his skeleton and innards remained intact, blood and flesh could regenerate swiftly. Thanks to Lin Dong's powerful primal dragon bone, even though a frightening amount of yuan power was pouring into his body, they could not destroy his bones. Bang bang bang. Everyone's heart was pounding in fear when they heard the sound of flesh exploding from the mountain peak. Meanwhile, a dense blood fog spread from that area before it finally covered the entire mountain peak. This explosion continued until evening. Finally, it began to die down. Everyone was looking at that area, however, the dense blood fog was so thick that it was difficult for one to see through. Therefore, no one knew whether Lin Dong had survived. In the sky, the final yuan power waterfall was finally devoured by that black figure which was formed by the devouring ancestral symbol. Subsequently, that black figure trembled violently before he finally transformed into a black light and shot into that blood fog. Roar! A low and deep dragon roar was emitted the moment that black figure shot into that blood fog. Moreover, the pressure radiating from that dragon roar caused countless people to tremble in fear. A resplendent purple gold light suddenly ripped through the blood fog, before it shot towards the sky. Soon after, it transformed into a huge purple gold dragon. Then, that dragon opened its mouth and devoured the viscous blood fog, before it finally roared towards the sky. That earth-shaking dragon roar spread. Following which, the yuan power clouds in the sky actually whizzed downwards. Finally, they were all swallowed by that purple gold dragon. Warm sunlight once again shone down from the sky. Meanwhile, the frightening yuan power pressure also slowly dissipated. However, every pair of eyes was focused on that humongous purple gold dragon. Meanwhile, intense light had erupted in that spot, before that purple gold dragon began to shrink in a distorted fashion. Finally, it once again turned into a skinny figure in front of the crowd. That man was dressed in black clothes and his black hair was drifting gently with the wind. Meanwhile, there was a faint purple gold glow on his youthful face, while an authoritative pressure, which could not be described with words, radiated from him. His dark black eyes were as deep as the night sky, causing one to sink within them. That man stood in the sky. Following which, he slowly clenched his long hands, before he subsequently released a long and clear roar. Immediately, a 10,000 feet large light pillar erupted from within his body. Finally, it transformed into an enormous light plate above the sky. That light plate rotated gently. There was no beginning and no end to it, just like reincarnation. Reincarnation plate. Ying Xuanzi and the rest stared at that enormous light plate, before joy surged within their eyes. After all, they knew that once that light plate appeared, it indicated Tamp Lin Dong had truly advanced to the reincarnation stage. Standing in the sky, Lindorn's eyes were also focused on that light plate. Meanwhile, an excited glow appeared on his lips. I finally reached this stage. This episode ends here.